Hi, my name is Nick Roberts. I'm the Executive Director of Salish Kootenai College Foundation, and I'm standing outside the Evelyn Stevenson building here on the SKC campus in Pablo, Montana, and to our east, the beautiful Mission Mountains we are blessed to work and live with. Welcoming you back. We are here introducing our very first virtual Tours and Tidbits event of our fall series, featuring our SKC Division of Education. At our foundation, we like to be a connector, we like to be an advocate, we like to be a storyteller, all the people and programs and talent we have here on the SKC campus and in our community at large. And the Tours and Tidbits series gives us a chance to peel back some of those layers and actually show you the people, the facilities, and the opportunity that is housed in this very special place we get to work and live in. And before we get started, if you want to learn more about our foundation, please go to vision.skc.edu. There you can find more about our Tours and Tidbits series. You can learn about our fundraising initiatives. You can learn how you can get involved. And then join us. Save the date. If you're able to join us in 3 weeks from today, October 26th at 5:30, we'll be doing our next event live. This is also a program of, or a department of, the Division of Education. We'll be featuring our Native American Studies department. So join us again 5:30 on October 26th. So without any further ado, we're going to enter the building and we're going to meet our tour guide, Mr. Doug Ruman. Stay for as long as you can. We're going to spend the next hour seeing the sights, meeting the people, hearing the impact of the Division of Education at SKC. And please do ask questions throughout. We'll be following our feed and try to respond to your questions as they come in. And thanks for your time. Without any further hesitation, Dean Doug Ruman of the Division of Education at SKC.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Doug Ruman, and I'm currently serving as the Dean of the Division of Ed here at SKC. And welcome to the Evelyn Stevenson building at our college. And as Nick said, this is our home of the Division of Education. And what we're going to be trying to do today is give you an overview of some of the different programs that we offer in education. We're very proud of the work that we do here in our division. We have 6 different distinct programs in teacher education. But more than that, what we're really about here in our division is that we're really about creating changes in the landscape of teaching in our area. The Flathead Reservation has 7 different school districts in it. In those school districts, we have about 400 teachers. And as you can see on the top of my head, I was a classroom teacher for quite a few years, and I don't have too much hair left up there because I was a classroom teacher, and I raised 2 girls. So raising 2 teenage girls, I lost my head of hair that I used to have. But I've been here a long time, I guess is the point. And when I first started teaching on the reservation back in the 1980s, there were very few Native teachers. I believe, if my statistics are correct, we had about 3 Native teachers on the reservation, and that's out of about 400 teachers in 7 school districts on the reservation. And this program started in 2007. Prior to that time, we had a 2+2 arrangement with the University of Montana Western in Dillon. So you could come to SKC and you could get an associate's degree in teaching, and then go and continue on here and be a UM Western student for your junior and senior year, and graduate with your bachelor's from Western and never have to go to Western, but graduate with their degree. And that worked for a few years, but it never really expressed the kind of education that I think students came to SKC to get. And so gradually we ended that partnership and created our own program. Prior to that time, SKC had a very robust early childhood education program. And that started actually in the mid-1980s. So we've been working with teacher education all the way since the mid-1980s. But none of that led to state licensure and mainstream classroom teaching. So that didn't start until about 2007. And when we started that program, we had elementary education. And since that time, since the time I mentioned in about 2007, we've graduated with SKC bachelor degrees, approximately about, I think we're up to about 115 teachers. And many of those teachers have stayed here on the Flathead Reservation. Today, just today, I walked down the hallways of the Ronan Elementary School, K. William Harvey Elementary School in Ronan. I walked down the hallways because I observed a student teacher. Actually, she's here, as a matter of fact, attending a class, an evening class tonight. And as I walked down that hallway, I used to teach in that school, and I looked to the left, and I looked to the right as I walked down the hallway, and I saw classroom after classroom after classroom of SKC graduates teaching in those classrooms. And it filled me with pride because I saw these people who graduated from our program, successful veteran teachers teaching in that school. Today, our statistics are now that we have between 30 and 40 native teachers that have a tribal affiliation, I should say, that are teaching in our schools, graduates of the programs here at SKC that are now, just on this reservation alone, that are now filling our local schools. And this is a huge impact because those teachers have learned how to teach in culturally sustaining and culturally responsive ways that are really making a difference. And that, year by year, has changed the landscape of what teaching and learning is like in Mission Valley. So you're going to see some of the nuts and bolts of that tonight, but the change is no small thing. It's a substantial change, and we have a lot going on. So I don't want to just keep talking all this time. I want you to have a chance to see some of that in action. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you as we walk through the building here. This is the Evelyn Stevenson building. Tell you a little bit about our different degrees that we have, and while I'm doing that, I'll show you our facility too. Sound like a deal? Hi, Michelle. Do you need to get through?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be in 113.
Oh, okay. Well, come on. We'll let you get through. Our building is sort of a big, long expanse. We have classrooms on the left-hand side. We have offices, faculty and staff offices on the right-hand side. We have a lending library here for students to be able to check out resources. Many of these are donated by current and past faculty and classroom teachers and administrators from our local schools that have retired and then given their personal libraries to our college. So that's where most of these resources have come from. This is just one classroom. All of our classrooms in teacher education are, as you see them now, are kind of set up with tables and chairs all facing one direction. But that's very atypical. Text pieces, maybe a reading program, let's say, or maybe a math series that they're using in the Polson or Ronan area schools. They'll sit down and they'll dissect those materials. They'll look at the assessment components in those materials, and they'll look at how they're testing. They'll compare that to state standards, and they'll look for those standards. Are those standards evident there? They'll put up posters, they'll generate posters, they'll use sticky notes to put different kinds of standards and elements of expectations up on the wall. They'll usually construct models of different kinds of things. So they end up working together a lot. So it's a very constructivist oriented approach to teaching, where people will be working a lot on project-based activities. So the emphasis isn't so much on lecture and theory, and a lot more on hands-on approaches. For example, we have a very strong research emphasis in our teacher education programs. But rather than sort of traditional theory-based research, we tend to focus on action research. Our students in all the programs do an action research project when they graduate, which is just prior to graduating, when they're in their student teaching. And what they do is they identify a problem that's in the classroom, and they have to formulate an intervention that addresses that particular problem in that classroom. And they go find a research base that addresses that problem, and they have to find a minimum of 3 different research articles that addresses it, and then they decide on an intervention that they want to try that seems to address the needs of that particular class, and then they do a series of trials to see how that works. They gather the data from that student group, and then they write it up. And they have to interview a few different education professionals in addition to the research that they did, and then they publish that and share it with everybody else in their learning community. So they have to do that as a capstone project. So that's called action research because it's done with a group of kids. So all of our students do that. In here we have a faculty workroom. This is busy with lots of faculty putting together projects. It's a little bit of a mess right now because we just received all of these materials. I don't know if you can see this very well, but these materials were just brought in. They've been made available to our local K-12 teachers and administrators who are part of a group called FRESH, Flathead Reservation Educator Support Hub. These are teachers that get together once a month and provide support for brand new teachers that are actually out in the field teaching. So they're employed teachers. They're graduates of SKC in many cases, but not all. And they get together once a month throughout the school year. And our SKC faculty meet with them too. And veteran teachers work with them to overcome the barriers that they're facing so that they can continue on in teaching and not opt out. Because we lose a lot of new teachers. Anyway, the people that have persisted with us over 4 years, we wanted to do something nice to give back to them. So these materials were purchased from the culture committees here on the reservation, and they're just incredible materials, all having to do with our local tribes here, including the seasonal round, posters about place names and maps, and books about coyote stories, and the Salish encounter in Lewis and Clark, and all kinds of materials. These are all going to be gifted to those new teachers as teaching resources. Well, they're all out and waiting to be disseminated. How are we doing on time, Dakota? Let's see.
Right on time.
Hi, Dr. Elser.
I think you're tired of the class, so.
Oh, well, I'll have to write that extra essay that I did. Well, we're in one of our classrooms here in the Stevenson building, and we're with Dr. Tammy Elser, who's kind of a rock star in our department. She is Montana's called the Treasure State, and Dr. Tammy Elser is one of our greatest treasures in the world of education for so many reasons. But probably the first and foremost reason is she is the state of Montana's #1 expert on literacy development for children. And we've got her right here at SKC, and that's no understatement. It is, or no overstatement, I should say. Excuse me. And Dr. Elser has agreed to talk with us a little bit at this Tourism Tidbits about how our department utilizes literature and our approach to literacy. And she's going to talk a little bit about that tonight for a short, little tiny snippet.
Short little tiny snippet.
And then we're going to move on to something else. So go ahead, Dr. Nelson.
Oh, thank you. After that introduction, I might not be able to talk at all, just so you know. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to share with you some information about how we approach literacy instruction here at Salish Kootenai College. I think that Doug way overstated my credentials. There are many fine literacy professors across the state of Montana. We do approach literacy here at Salish Kootenai College a little bit differently, and we're very, very focused on rigorous utilization of the science and simultaneously doing something that I call pervasive integration. So I kind of wanted to approach this differently because I don't really have the opportunity to have my students here today. About 3 or 4 of them are working right now in after-school programs for the Boys and Girls Club, and others are coaching and have other obligations and responsibilities that are both professional and personal. So I thought that I would approach it through the lens of you being my student just for a few minutes, if that would work for you. So I wanted to talk about the gift of literacy and how you can promote literacy with the children in your life. I am imagining that I might be speaking to some aunties and some uncles and some grandmas and grandpas, or great-grandparents even, or actually some parents of young children who might be concerned about how to support their child in becoming robustly literate. And I'm going to share with you a few things about the Education Division and how we approach literacy. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is we have this really deep commitment to the perpetuation of the Salish, Alispa, and Kasanka cultures in the context of all of the courses that we teach, and that includes in the context of literacy. This means that we emphasize Salish culture, Salish Kootenai and Kasanka culture, or Salish, Kasanka, and Kalispel culture. We emphasize teaching the history, we emphasize the teaching about sovereignty, and we emphasize the teaching about diversity. And we have a tremendous amount of diversity all around us, and it's one of our greatest treasures. And we want that to be part of the content that we pervasively integrate into our core curriculum. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that we focus fairly intensely on critical literacy, and that means taking a critical look at how we are teaching, why we are teaching, and always running it through the first filter, the most important filter, who we are teaching. So the who ends up driving the how of instruction and the what of instruction. And that emphasis on the child and the needs of the child within the context of their broader community is one of the things that we do in relation to critical literacy. So I wanted to emphasize, when I use the term literacy, I'm talking about both reading and writing, and I'm talking about them equally. One is encoding, that's writing, when you're actually encoding the language and telling your own story, and it's powerful and important. And the other one is decoding, when you are getting the information from another individual who has shared or written a story for you and for your benefit. So when I use the word literacy, I want you to know that it's a balance between both reading and writing with equity across both of those domains. And I wanted to share a few things for you as parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles, assuming that there's a child in your life somewhere that you love and would love to support in becoming more literate. I want to talk a little bit about how literacy needs to be joyful, how literacy helps inform, and also how literacy ultimately can transform, including transforming the actual life outcome of an individual as a consequence of having rich reading and writing skills. So with that, here are 10 things that you can do. You have a little one at home, the very first thing from the very first day is to read to that child every day. That is number one. The second one is to engage in conversations about the book that you are reading while you are reading it with the child. That's number two. To make it interactive and to make it fun is number three. And if the child stops having fun, do something else. Take a pause, do something else. It's not like a test that you have to go through. The other thing that I hope all parents will take away is the need to celebrate repetition. You know how a child will come to you over and over and over and over again with the exact same book, whether it be The Cat in the Hat or a book that they've carried around with them like Goodnight Moon every single day since the first day that they were able to crack that book. The repetition of that book is absolutely central to the child actually becoming a proficient reader. They will initially start by modeling off of you, and they'll actually reread that book from memory. And that is not a bad thing. That is a super positive and super beneficial thing for the learner. And finally, number 5, when you're reading with a child, use your finger. Point to the words as you are reading the words, tracking from left to right. So the child is then learning concepts about print and all kinds of things associated with how to read. And you'll be surprised how quickly they begin to pick up a concept of what a word is in the context of a picture book or text. Another thing that I was hoping to get through, but I'm not going to be able to talk about it very much, is to emphasize high-frequency sight words with kids. So there's a standard list of those. I will make sure that the SKC Foundation has a copy of that list. So if you're interested in this topic, you can look them up and you know what sequence they occur in the English language. And if you need any further information about that, I would be delighted to help you with that. To read words to your child over and over as you encounter words daily. Create flashcards and labels on things within the environment. All of those are ways of engaging your learners more closely. So you get the idea. And finally, pencil and paper activities. One of the things that COVID has left us with is a tremendous deficit in children's early literacy experience. So we've got this window now of a year and a half where kids have actually had seriously disrupted educations. And here at SKC, with our emphasis on writing, one of the things I'm encouraging all my students to do is to create a little book like this. This is just copy paper, and you can use recycled paper between 2 pieces of colored paper. Create a book for your child, and then let your child explore the world of writing. And know that the first things they're going to write are going to be scribbles. And those scribbles are incredibly important and incredibly valuable first steps to their becoming highly proficient and highly literate. Later on, you're going to see that they begin to kind of make up spellings for the sounds that they hear in words, or what they perceive are the sounds within words. Those made up spellings are treasures, and there is research to prove that kids that use those actually outperform students who don't use invented spelling in their early literacy. And then finally, to talk about words and support your child in sounding them out, and to teach the letter sounds in advance of teaching the letter names. This sounds counterintuitive because we all learned the alphabet song, right? So we can all sit down and sing A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But it's very, very, very important for children to have the letter sounds. So you want to teach them B for the letter B rather than the letter name B, because it's B that they're going to use to be able to read the word butterfly, right? So there's a couple of things that you can do, and I'm going to make sure that the SKC Foundation has a copy of a wonderful little article that I took that from. This is by Dr. Richard Gentry, and it's tips for parents of preschoolers or adults who take care of preschoolers on how to support them in becoming better readers. And I wanted you to have just a flavor of some of the things that we do. The last thing, do I have 2 minutes? Do I have 2 minutes? I might have 2 minutes.
6 minutes.
The last thing I'd like to share is how we try to emphasize authentic text. And here we really focus on teaching students how to identify bias and stereotypes about American Indians within children's literature. These are very, very commonly perpetuated through children's literature and often through movies, through YouTube videos of nursery rhymes. And getting rid of that bias is a critical thing. And if you're a grandparent trying to buy a book for a child that you love, it's really easy to inadvertently buy a book that actually perpetuates or expands on, or extends that kind of bias and stereotype. So what the recommendation that I have is to seek picture books that are authored by American Indian authors. I have a couple here that I highly recommend. One of them is Huckleberry's Buttercups and Celebrations. It is by Jennifer Finley, and it is also illustrated by Antoine Sandoval, and Jennifer is Salish, and Antoine is Salish and Danae. And they both are extraordinary in their talent. This is a book of poems that follow the months of the year. And I think when I close this, if you'll give me 2 seconds, I will read a poem from this exceptional book authored by a Salish poet of some significant renown. Another one that I'd like to feature is Gift of the Bitterroot. These are both published by Pristine Press, which is a local press. And Gift of the Bitterroot is an actual traditional story coming from this culture. It was produced or developed by Julie Cajun. It was authored by Johnny R. Lee. And this one, again, is illustrated by Antoine Sandoval. And it's a beautiful story that talks about the bitterroot coming to the people here and how the bitterroot is traditionally used. And all of the, at the back of the book, there's a tremendous amount, a lovely afterwards with actual information, scientific information on the bitterroot following the traditional story of how the bitterroot came to the people. So 2 books that I wanted to reference. Last notes, I encourage you to look for these local resources by Salish, Sanka, and Kalispel peoples, and to look for things that are authored locally when you can. And when you cannot, I'd like you to go to other American Indian authors like Joy Harjo. This is a contemporary picture book called The Good Luck Cat. Joy Harjo was the poet laureate for the United States over the last several years. And she's an extraordinarily talented poet, but this is one of her early picture books, and it is great fun and exquisite. With that, can I read a poem? Do I have time to read a poem?
Go ahead.
It's very short.
Yeah.
It's very short. I need you to know that Jennifer authored these poems as sonnets, and I have just a tremendous amount of respect for her professional expertise, and I love using books like this. So this one, Salish, Sleep Specnis, October, the hunting month. This time of year we hunt for elk and deer and moose. We'll tan the hide and eat the meat so nothing's wasted. Life is sacred, dear. We don't take more than we can use or eat. October's when the trees turn orange, the air turns crisp. You'll see your breath when you're outside. Ice forms in puddles. Fog will rise in air. On top of ponds in morning, snow grows wide and moves from mountaintops to valleys down below. The cold takes hold. The magpies stay, along with ducks and hawks. The grass is brown and yellow. The nights grow long. The days are gray. Respect the deer, the elk, the moose, for all they give to us. The world is for us all. Lemlunch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elser. Really appreciate your time tonight.
Very welcome.
Good. Well, we're going to head on down to another classroom. And our next presenter this is very cool. This is a graduate of our program, our elementary K-8 program. A little later, I'm going to talk more about the actual degree programs at the very end. We have a graduate of SKC, graduated just this past June, and was hired as a 2nd grade teacher in our local elementary, Kayleen Harvey Elementary School in Ronan. And I'll introduce you to him. He said he would be willing to come down and share some of his work in his classroom. So. Hey, Jacob.
Perfect timing, perfect timing.
This is Mr. Asensio.
Officially now.
Officially now. This is Jacob Asensio. And
Always nice.
Jacob graduated in June from the elementary ed program here, a former student of mine, and somebody who I have a tremendous amount of respect for and admiration for. And he was hired, student taught in an elementary school in Ronan, and they scooped him right up. So they recognized his talent for teaching. And now he teaches 2nd grade, and he consented to share with you guys a little bit of what he's doing in his classroom. How long have you been teaching now? 6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks.
And he's knocking them dead over there in Ronan. And the principal stopped one of our student teaching coordinator who happened to be in the building not too long ago, and just he was gushing about Jacob. So we're so proud of you. And thank you so much for taking time to share with our audience during the live stream today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Tonight, I'll kind of just be walking you guys through some of the knowledge and information that I've learned here at Baylor Scootney College and the ways in which I'm applying it within my instruction today. So if you'd like to follow me this way. Beginning back in my Indigenous Perspectives in Science for Educators course, we follow this framework of following the seasonal round or the seasonal cycle. And I've really used that to create the framework within my classroom. I feel as if it's the perfect setup to authentically engage students with tribal language and culture, and it just helps with the overall implementation. So big shout out to Dr. Michael Munson and Tim Ryan for teaching me that and how to go about incorporating the seasonal round within the classroom setting. We of course decided to start in the fall time, as that's where we're at now. We will just move along as it goes. And as I said, it's best to do that in an authentic manner because it allows better opportunities to have community members come in. For example, if you were teaching coyote stories and you tried to do it in the springtime, you're not really going to be able to have someone come in and share those stories. So that's why it's important to follow this cycle. And it just allows better opportunities for the students to engage in those activities as well. With all that being said, I started by having my students generate a list as a class on what they thought of when they thought of fall. From there, they were able to engage by sharing out their ideas, and it allowed them to have some, I would say, ownership of their learning, while also engaging them in an authentic manner. From there, we moved towards what did the natives do during these seasons? So we specifically looked at the Salish, as I said, using the seasonal round, and implementing my knowledge from the Integrated Perspectives in Science for Educators course. From there, I went ahead and taught the students about things that happen in the fall, such as hunting, gathering, medicine, high canning, and we added that to our list. So we were able to integrate both their perspectives and their everyday lives, as well as Indian Ed for All education, which is super important to integrate the two as opposed to isolating them within the classroom setting. Our next step in this process was to create the seasonal rounds. I decided to go ahead and use the seasonal round in which I had created in my class, so the students were able to see an idea and an example of which they could follow. As you can see here, you can see some of the artwork that my students did for their fall section. Students were able to draw whatever they like. Some followed mine and they decided to add little animals. Some decided to draw like a little Thanksgiving dinner. Whatever came to their mind, I left it pretty open to them. This, however, is the perfect opportunity to integrate math, so I decided to point out that, what shape is this? And the kids were able to say a circle. And once again, you're able to integrate language by saying, oh, in Salish, the word for circle is sial. So then it just allows those opportunities to integrate both math and language and history all together. Another way to integrate math was with the sections, asking the students how many parts are in this circle. Are they equal? Are they not equal? And then you can count 1, 2, 3, 4. Also another way to integrate language, Nku, Esel, Chafla, Moose, and having the kids repeat you and get that auditory experience. Following the creation of our seasonal rounds, we moved into a story. I chose Where Did You Get Your Moccasins? As I learned in Dr. Tammy Elser's integrated literacy courses, it's super important to comb through your text and determine which books are authentic and best represent Native American tribes. So I did such with this book. Another book I have as a support text was When the Shadbush Blooms by Carla Messenger, just because I feel as if it goes about the seasonal round in a great way, and you're able to integrate more tribes and discuss the differences amongst tribes. After we read our story, students were given the opportunity to look at real moccasins. Once again, this is the perfect opportunity to integrate math by looking at geometric designs. With doing so, I think it's really important to both recognize who created the artwork, what their tribal affiliation is, just to individualize who Native people are and differentiate them from tribes as opposed to that pan-Indianism that often is taught within schools. And that's something that SKC definitely bestowed upon me, is that we should really make sure we're differentiating amongst tribes. After all that, kids were given the opportunity to design and color in their own paper moccasins like such. As you can see here on the board, here's some examples. At SKC last year during my senior year, I had the opportunity to do a little Friday school where I co-taught with a former graduate, and we worked with students ages ranging from 5 to 10, which was perfect practice for me as a soon-to-be teacher to work with a small group and kind of explore my different lessons and see how they work amongst different age groups. After the students designed and colored in their moccasins, they were given the task of measuring their feet using a ruler. This was a perfect math opportunity because many of the students haven't even used a ruler before. So they were able to look at it, determine what side is inches based off the numbers. And we talked about that. Oh, okay, at the top, there's 12 inches. 12 inches makes a foot. And then we're able to look at the other side and differentiate centimeters from that. So it's just a perfect opportunity to integrate a math tool within our lesson. Moving along, once they measured their feet, we decided to put it up on a graph. This gave them the opportunity to have a visual representation of their work, as well as something they could physically touch, which was really good for the students. This is just an example here. I put some different moccasins that my students created up. At my school, I put it up in the hallway just so the students were able to showcase their work, and it gave them some confidence in regard to how they're doing, which was another thing that was heavily taught within SKC and their curriculum here, that we should always work to empower our students and give them confidence to increase their learning within the classroom. Especially with young Native students, I feel as if adapting these lessons and integrating tribal culture and language within the classroom, it gives students that confidence and empowers them and lets them see, oh, this is kind of who I am, this is my background, this is my knowledge. And it kind of just gives them an edge in the classroom. To integrate language here within the math, I added all the Salish names for these numbers here, and us as a class, we went over it. So for 1, we did Inku, 2, Esel, 3, Cheflef, 4, Moose, 5, Seal, 6, Talkin, 7, Seaspo, 8, He'etnum, or He'etnum, 9, Canute, and 10, Upin. This was just a great way to integrate both math and language together within one cohesive piece. On the side here, I also added the numbers. More math that we were able to do within this lesson was discuss the different parts of a graph. Within a graph, you need a title. Within a graph, you need to know, what do the numbers mean? What do they represent? And an extension to that would be, what's the mode? What number appears the most? So just finding any of those opportunities to integrate math and language and all those different things within authentic ways is what I try to capture, as I was taught at SKC in the best way possible. So that was also something I was really taught within my math courses, thanks to Dr. Heather Bleeker. She really worked with us on looking at the big objectives and the ways in which we would get there. So yeah, that is an example of the ways in which I have gone about integrating tribal culture and language within the classroom, especially within mathematics. And I'm just very grateful for all the knowledge and information that I've learned at SKC and been able to apply it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And pass it off to you. Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time to share all that with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like losing my voice after teaching all day.
Yeah, he's been working with students all day and then came down and set all this up and then visited with us.
And I would do it again in a heartbeat.
What's that?
And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh, that makes me happy. Did you even get a chance to go home yet?
No.
No.
I'll get there.
Land lunch.
Yeah, thank you.
Land lunch. Thank you. All right, we were right on time.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. We're going to head down to our last presentation. I want to mention, before we go in, just a little bit by way of introduction. We have a very cool thing that we developed here in the Division of Ed with our science curriculum. One of the things that a lot of people probably don't realize is when you're in an elementary education program, one of the things that you have to do is take a lot of content classes, because if you're an elementary teacher, you teach it all, right? You teach social studies, science, reading, math, you teach everything. So you have to be a generalist. You have to take a lot of content classes. And it used to be, years and years ago, we used to have to take biology and geology and physics and chemistry. We used to have to take all those from science faculty and not education faculty. So they didn't really understand the nature of how that content would be like in a classroom from a teacher's perspective, because they were science instructors. And so they would take it from that kind of hard science perspective. So for a while we did that, and then we changed it around and we created a sequence called Science for Teachers, or Science for Educators, 1, 2, and 3. And so we had 3 4-credit courses that we taught. I actually was one of those instructors. And we did that for a while. And the first one was pretty much just life sciences, so biology. And then we had one that was basically earth sciences. But it was all from a teacher's perspective. So it wasn't how to teach so much like a methods class. It was science content, but it was still from a teacher's point of view. And that worked pretty well for a number of years. But we heard from students that they wanted more cultural knowledge. So we, about 3 or 4 years ago, we completely retooled it. And we created a new sequence of 3 courses. And now it's called, it's kind of a mouthful, Integrated Perspectives in Science for Educators. 1, 2, and 3. For short, we just call it IPSE, I-A-P-S-E, Integrated Perspectives. And this is a whole new approach to teaching science. And instead of from a Western perspective, now it's from an indigenous perspective. And it's built around the seasonal round. So all the 4 seasons, what happens in each of those 4 seasons where all the sciences are combined together and built around the seasonal round, and the way people in our area, for the Salish, Kluspa, and Kasenka, how they live their lives and how all those sciences came into play. For example, in the fall, during hunting season, that season where people would tend to hunt and gather berries and roots and various kinds of foods like that, what was the biology of that? What was the chemistry that was involved in that? What were the physics that were involved in that? So we bring all of those sciences together in a more integrated way instead of in a compartmentalized way like Western science would. Does that make sense? So that's the approach that we took with these courses. And our instructor for that is another one of those gems, like I mentioned Tammy earlier. And this is Tim Ryan. And so I just gave you a great introduction, Tim. It was too bad you weren't there to hear it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was a great introduction.
Oh,
I was building you up. It's good to see you.
My ears were getting a little red.
Yeah. So this is Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan is the instructor for the Integrated Perspectives in Science for Educators class. And that class is offered every quarter. It's not the same class, though, because it's seasonal. And I'm going to let him tell you more about that. I kind of already gave a little bit of a background about the class and the reason why we have it, but you might want to add to that. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
take it
Doug.
from there.
What I'm doing today is a couple of students, and what we're doing is we're weaving some cattail mats here. And we're taking the cattail leaves, and we're actually making a mat that was traditionally constructed during this time of year, the fall. When the cattail gets mature in the fall, it dies. So it's a perennial, and it comes back every year. So it's a great learning material to learn from, learn how to weave mats together, baskets, and other items. So, and right now, drying the berries. The berries are mature late summer, early fall, and we've got hawthorn berries here. And what this is it's a drying rack made of cattail leaves. And the holes, the voids in there, and the variegated surface allows the air to circulate around the fruit. So we also, we talk about our teachers. Our teachers is natures too. We learn from the muskrat, the use of cattail. And then we also, you know, we entertain our kids with cattail deer figures and such. Toys. Might want to show you a little bit of a seasonal round graphic that we use here that helps to guide us in our seasonal instructions of what's going on. So this is modeled, of course, after the Salish, Kalispé, and Kasanka tribes and their seasons and the appropriate times to do things. So what we have here, we're in the month of October, which is hunting month, and which is very appropriate because a lot of our tribal members are hunting at this time. And also, what we have in here is the collection of certain plants in the fall, bulrush and cattail, which is mature at this time. And as a matter of fact, earlier I was with some of my students, and we were collecting some of the cattail mats or cattail leaves today for that. We also talk about the different activities. There's also major hunting during the fall that goes on, just as the month has said, the month of hunting. This inner ring is the months, the Salish and Kalispé months identified here. November will be storytelling, December trapping month, and then January handshaking month. So this is what guides our curriculum, is the seasonal round, the appropriate stories, the appropriate interaction with our elders during this time and taking them out to gather some of the appropriate plants. Medicinal plants at this time, herbal medicines are also harvested at this time. And the major hunting, of course, hide tanning is part of this whole time in the fall too. So, of course, one of the mission statements of the Salish Kootenai College is to teach about our Salish, Kalispé, and Kasanka people as part of bringing in culture into our curriculum. And I'm also an Indigenous STEM instructor also, so we talk about the sciences built around a lot of these traditional skills and traditional ecological knowledge, and is also a part of understanding our place within the natural environment and in general within the whole cosmos of our existence as part of a connection with these natural native plants that are in our natural areas. And we honor these plants. We teach the respect and conservation of a lot of these resources out there too, and how they are part of our lives traditionally, but also how they're part of our lives in contemporary times also. What are the issues environmentally? We're losing certain habitats, which we lose certain habitats. That means we're losing certain animals, certain plants, endangered species. We lose some of that, then we lose part of our culture, because our culture is so tied with our natural environment, animals, plants, rocks, minerals. All of that make it essential for our perpetuation of our culture. And so SKC is here to help perpetuate the Salish, Kalispé, and Kasanka culture. And if you got, we also during this, we've also embarked on creating a degree program in cultural language right now with Salish and Kasanka teachings. And so we're also doing that seasonally. The first year is language immersion, and then the next 3 years are learning the traditional skills, the traditional knowledge, and language, and then creating opportunities for these students to work in schools and other jobs and other departments. But the whole thing is that they get rounded out as culturally as an individual and to move forward in their lives, feeling that they are culturally competent and that they can move through any kind of situation with their confidence of who they are. So, thank you for visiting. I better get back to these students now. I'm sure that they're keeping on track. Lamps, everyone.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, I think what we're going to do to finish off tonight, thank you to those of you that are still on the call for hanging tough and hanging with us to the end. I'd like to just finish off by giving a very brief overview of the different programs that we offer in the division. I think I started by saying that I was going to do that. So I'm going to try to keep this really brief. We have 6 different programs in teacher education. I mentioned earlier that we've had early childhood education here at SKC since the middle of the 1980s, which we still have. And that early childhood ed prepares teachers to go out into the field and teach in Head Starts and preschool environments, so birth to age 8. We have graduates from that program that work with infants and toddlers, all the way up to 3 to 5-year-olds, and like I said, working in Head Starts. That program, well, all of our programs in teacher ed, all 6 programs that I'm going to tell you about, have associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees if you choose to move on. So associates and bachelors. And the early childhood program graduates often do go work in Head Start, but some of them have gone on and started their own preschool centers or early learning centers of their own, private ones. And we have several graduates that have opened up their own centers in Polson and Ronan and operated them as successful businesses. Some of them have gone on to become lead teachers in those early learning centers for the tribes or in other centers. So that's one program. The next program is also early childhood education, but it leads to licensure with the state of Montana because it's called Early Childhood Education P3, preschool to 3rd grade. So it's a concentration on 4-year-olds to 8-year-olds. And it leads to being able to teach in a public school, but only up to 3rd grade. And the reason for that program is because more and more Montana schools, public schools, are having preschools in them. And if you had the traditional Montana elementary education degree, kindergarten through 8th grade, which is the next program I'm going to mention, if you had that, you couldn't teach in preschool because it starts in kindergarten and goes to 8th grade, right? So you couldn't teach in preschool, public preschool. So who are they going to get to do that? That's why they created this preschool to 3rd grade licensure track. And so we just started that back in 2014. So that's what the other early childhood program is. Then there's the elementary K-8 program, which is the one I mentioned, started in 2007. And that's our biggest program. We have about 60 or so students in that program. Just this fall, holy cow, I was here over the summer. I work year-round, and I was here in the summer, and Kathy, our administrative assistant, and I were fielding inquiries about elementary ed to the tune of 1 to 3 or 4 every single week throughout the summer. I think we got something like 20 to 26 or something brand new incoming freshmen this year alone, just in elementary ed. So that's our biggest program. Typically, in a normal year, we graduate around 12 to 15 of those elementary ed folks a year. So that means that many people going out into the workforce as new teachers. And I should probably add that about 75% of all of our graduates in all of our programs in the Division of Education have a tribal affiliation, and about 25% are non-Indian. So of all of those graduates that are going out to the schools, about 75% have a tribal affiliation. But anyway, so early childhood ed, P3, elementary K-8, and then we have 2 different secondary ed programs. That means grades 5 through 12, so middle school and high school. One is Broadfield Science, teaching all the science subjects in middle and high schools. That leads to state certification or licensure too. And mathematics, so science and math, middle school and high school. And then the very last program is brand new, well, within the last 2 years, I should say. But it's our newest program, and that's Native Language Teacher Education. Native Language Teacher Education, or NLTE for short, is our newest program in our division. That program has a very unique application. We have a situation on the Flathead Reservation with our native languages. We have native speakers here who are strong in their language, and they want to teach, but they don't have teaching skills. They're strong in their language, they know how to speak it, but they don't have knowledge of learning objectives, how to write a good lesson plan, how to manage a classroom, all the teacher skills that they need, they don't have those. Then we have people who have the teaching experience but aren't strong in the language, right? So there's a gap. And for us to really address the problem of revitalizing our language, we have to fill that gap. That's a real issue on this reservation. If we're going to save the language, we need teachers that are good teachers that are strong in the language. So that's why NLTE was created. It was to fill that gap, to bridge it. So we are very excited because this year, 21-22, is our first year that we have 4 graduates, seniors in NLTE, that are going to graduate with their bachelor's degrees in that program. We're very excited about that. So these will be people who are going to graduate having taken 3 years of in-depth immersion language. This happens to be Salish language because it's our first. We were approached by the Salish Kulispa Culture Committee asking for this program. So we had a Salish-centric start, but we hope to expand it to other languages, especially Kasenka, coming soon. But we're going to have these people graduating with good command of the language and knowledge of how to teach it well as well. And that program, NLTE, is going to be a focus of the next Tours and Tidbits on October 26th. So you're going to want to tune into that for the next one. So that's a quick look at the programs that we offer in the Division of Ed, and it's been my honor and my pleasure to be able to share that with you today. Thanks very much to the Foundation, to Nick and to Dakota for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak with you and share with you this evening, and I appreciate it. And Shahoy.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Is it too early to speculate about something that we could be celebrating this time next year in your division?
Oh, yes. There is a program on the horizon that we're very excited about, and that is our graduate program. We are going to be offering a master's degree. We're hoping that we'll be offering a master's degree in education right here at SKC, our own degree, not in conjunction with the University of blah blah, but our own degree right here at SKC. We were granted permission to move forward with that by our board of directors, and the next and really last step in our approval process is to go to our regional and national accreditors, Northwest Council in Portland, Oregon, for permission to move forward with it, and we're doing that right now. So we're putting that request in this fall, actually this month, and we should know in November whether we get the green light. And so by the end of this calendar year, for sure, we will know whether that is a go. We're very hopeful. We've got the best team possible that you could ever have working on that here in the division. So I think we'll know by the end of this calendar year whether that's going to be a go, and we're very confident. Got a great team.
There's not a better way to end today's event than that hopeful news. Please stay tuned, and I'm sure there'll be lots of messaging once that gets approved and it becomes a reality. Just to wrap, for those who didn't see me in the beginning, my name is Nick Roberts. I'm the Executive Director of Salish Community College Foundation. We have been visiting the Division of Education here at SKC for the last hour. You've gotten a deeper look into the people, the ways travel colleges invite learning, how they teach, and their ways of being. And it's a gift to have spent the hour with you, Doug, and your team and your colleagues. And for those who are interested in learning more, please go to our website. Our foundation's website is vision.skc.edu, where you can learn about our Tours and Tidbits virtual series. We'll do these monthly. The next one, as Doug said, is 3 weeks from today, the 26th of October, 5:30, same virtual space on Facebook Live. And you can also learn on our website about how you can get involved and how you can be a part of fundraising initiatives to help support divisions and departments and programs like what you learned about tonight. Thanks to all of you who stuck it out or who joined us at the last, and we'll see you next time.